They're overthinking it. She whispered it to herself. But the Korean mafia boss heard every word. 20 experts had just walked out defeated, 4 hours, 0 solutions. The encrypted ledger was about to cost him half his empire. Then Octavia Calloway, a cleaner in a blue uniform, glanced at the screen and solved it in 60 seconds. No degree. No training. Just one look. His frozen stare said everything. The most dangerous person in that room wasn't wearing a suit. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to Ebony and Pearl Stories so you never miss stories like this one. Now let's get into it.
This is impossible. The shout ricocheted off the glass walls of the 42nd floor boardroom. An analyst in a tailored suit slammed his fist on the table, sending coffee rippling in expensive porcelain cups. 20 of us, another expert snapped, his voice cracking with exhaustion. 20 specialists with advanced degrees, and we can't unlock a single encrypted ledger? Duquesne is going to have our heads, someone muttered from the back. 20 experts. $40 million on the line. And not one solution. The stakes were brutal and simple. If the financial ledger wasn't cracked by sunrise, Huang Duquesne would lose half his empire to a rival syndicate. Failure wasn't theoretical. It was survival. And failure was all that filled the room. The boardroom itself was a monument to power. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over polished marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering city skyline 42 stories below. Men in custom suits sat around a table that cost more than most people's homes. Their tattoos barely visible beneath silk and wool, silent reminders of the violence that built this empire. At the head of the table sat Huang Duquesne, motionless, expressionless, terrifying. He didn't need to shout. His silence was louder than any rage. When he folded his hands on the table, the room understood. Time was running out. Outside in the hallway, Octavia Calloway pushed her cleaning cart across the marble floor. The wheels squeaked softly, a sound no one inside noticed or cared about. She wore a pressed blue uniform, worn sneakers, and had learned long ago the survival skill that kept her employed. Be invisible. One earbud in. One ear listening. That's how you stayed safe in places like this. If you believe hardworking people deserve recognition no matter their job title, hit that subscribe button right now. Only elitists and snobs who think cleaners are beneath them won't subscribe. Don't be one of them. Inside the boardroom, the chaos escalated. The algorithm is sealed. An engineer shouted, jabbing his finger at the projection on the glass wall. No backdoor. No pattern. It's unbreakable. Everything's breakable. Another analyst shot back. We're just not smart enough to see it. Don't put that on me, gentlemen. Duquesne's voice cut through the argument like a blade through silk. Quiet. Controlled. Deadly. The room fell silent. Step away, he said calmly. No one argued. When Huang Duquesne spoke, you listened. The experts gathered their tablets and documents. Frustration etched into every movement. Shoulders tight. Pride wounded. One by one, they filed out of the boardroom, the door shutting behind them with a soft, final click. Only Octavia remained. She stood frozen in the corner, cleaning cloth in hand, hoping he wouldn't notice her. But the silence pressed down like a weight. The empty room felt massive, intimidating. She hesitated, then reached for her cart. That's when she saw it. The encrypted ledger still glowing on the screen. Numbers and symbols cascading in complex patterns. And beneath all that complexity, something the experts had missed. A rhythm. A repetition. They're overthinking it, she murmured under her breath before she could stop herself. The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Duquesne's eyes lifted. Sharp. Curious. Fixed on her. What did you say? He asked. Octavia's heart slammed against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to apologize, to disappear, to follow the rule that had kept her safe for 20 years. Be invisible. But something in his gaze, intense yes but not cruel, pulled the truth out of her. I'm sorry, sir, she stammered. I was just talking to myself. Duquesne gestured toward the screen. You see something? Octavia swallowed hard. Silence had always kept her safe, but this moment felt different. They're solving it the long way, she said softly, stepping closer without waiting for permission. The ledger's not locked by complexity. It's locked by repetition. She pointed at a sequence buried in the data. Every 7th line resets. she continued, her voice gaining confidence. It's pretending to be random. But it isn't. It's a pattern disguised as chaos. Du-Kyen leaned forward slightly. Octavia reached for the stylus on the table. Her hands didn't shake. Years of working night shifts had taught her to trust her instincts. One small adjustment. One reverse sequence. One substitution. The screen blinked. Unlocked. The entire financial ledger spilled open in less than 60 seconds. Octavia stared at it, stunned. "Oh," she whispered. "That was easier than I thought." Silence crushed the room. Du-Kyen stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. For the first time in years, something unfamiliar tightened in his chest. "Shaw." He looked at the screen, then at Octavia, then back at the screen. 20 experts. For hours. Millions of dollars in consulting fees. And a cleaner in a blue uniform had solved it in 1 minute. "You solved in 1 minute," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight Octavia didn't fully understand yet. What 20 experts could not? Octavia stepped back, suddenly very aware of who she was standing in front of. A man whose handshake could end lives. A man whose empire was built on blood and precision. "I clean patterns, sir," she said simply. "Floors, files, they're not that different." A lesser man would have laughed. A cruel one would have punished her for witnessing his failure. Huang Du-Kyen did neither. Instead, for the first time in longer than he could remember, he smiled. If you can't stand when talented people get overlooked just because of their job or background, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now. And drop a comment telling us what time you're watching this. Let's see how many of you are here supporting real stories about real people. Don't skip this. We want to hear from you. The next morning, the boardroom filled early. 20 experts filed in at 8:45 a.m., coffee in hand, exhaustion still clinging to their faces. They'd been summoned back by Du-Kyen with a single message. Meeting. 9 a.m. mandatory. They expected praise for their effort. Maybe an update on the ledger. Perhaps even bonuses for working through the night. What they found instead stopped them cold. Octavia Calloway sat at the conference table, still in her blue cleaning uniform, hands folded neatly in front of her. Eyes calm. Cart parked against the wall behind her. Murmurs rippled through the room. "What is this?" one analyst muttered under his breath. "Is this some kind of joke?" another whispered. Du-Kyen entered last, his presence silencing the room instantly. He took his seat at the head of the table and gestured toward Octavia without preamble. "Good morning," he said. "Miss Calloway will be explaining how she solved the problem you could not." The room stiffened. Octavia cleared her throat softly and stood, her voice steady despite the 20 pairs of eyes now locked on her. "Good morning," she said. "I know this looks unusual, but I'll keep it simple." She gestured toward the screen now displaying the unlocked ledger. The encryption wasn't as complicated as it seemed. It was repetition pretending to be complexity. Every 7th line reset the sequence. Once I saw the pattern, I just reversed it. She paused, searching for the right words. "It's like cleaning a floor," she continued. "Sometimes you use 5 different products and scrub for hours. Other times, you realize warm water and one good cloth will do the job. You just have to see what's actually dirty versus what looks dirty." A few analysts exchanged glances. One pulled out his tablet and began cross-referencing her explanation with the data. "Wait," he said slowly. "She's right. The 7th line reset. It's here. We missed it completely." Another expert verified the sequence. Then another. Each confirmation tightened the discomfort in the room. Arthur, the senior technical analyst, leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "She found a more efficient path than our entire protocol," he admitted. "We were so focused on breaking the encryption, we didn't stop to see if there was a simpler way in." Du-Kyen's gaze swept across the table. "Miss Calloway solved in 60 seconds what cost us 4 hours and nearly cost me half my empire," he said, his voice quiet but absolute. "She is the reason you are all still employed. I suggest you remember that." The words landed like a verdict. Some of the experts nodded, respect flickering in their eyes. A young engineer even smiled slightly, clearly impressed. But others? Their jaws tightened. Their eyes hardened. Pride doesn't die easily, especially when it's wounded by someone they'd been trained to overlook. Octavia sat back down, trying to make herself small again. But Du-Kyen wasn't done. Miss Calloway will be joining us moving forward as a consulting analyst, he announced. Temporarily. Her perspective is valuable. Treat it as such. The meeting ended shortly after. Experts filed out in silence, some offering polite nods to Octavia, others avoiding her gaze entirely. When the room finally emptied, only Octavia and Duqian remained. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city. You didn't have to do that, Octavia said quietly. Do what? Duqian asked without turning. Give me credit in front of them. You could have said you solved it yourself. I could have, Duqian said. But I didn't. He turned to face her. Why did you drop out of school? He asked suddenly. Octavia blinked at the shift. Excuse me. You're clearly intelligent. Educated. Why stop? Octavia hesitated, then answered honestly. My mom got sick. Medical bills piled up. Tuition became a luxury I couldn't afford. So I chose her over my degree. And you've been cleaning ever since? 3 jobs, Octavia said. Cleaning pays the bills. Keeps me invisible. Safe. Duqian studied her for a long moment. I didn't go to university, he said. I built this empire with violence and precision. I learned to see patterns in people. Who to trust, who to eliminate, who to fear. He stepped closer. You see patterns too. But yours come from survival, not violence. That makes you different. Different doesn't mean better, Octavia said. In my world, different means valuable. They stood in silence, the contrast between them stark and undeniable. His power built on blood. Hers built on resilience. His precision honed by cruelty. Hers sharpened by necessity. Why are you really doing this? Octavia asked. You don't need me. You have 20 experts. I have 20 people who think the same way, Duqian corrected. You think differently. That's what I need. He walked back to the table and picked up a folder. I want you to stay. Temporarily. A few months. Consult on projects. No pressure. You keep your other jobs if you want. You work on your terms. Temporarily. Octavia repeated, testing the word. Yes. Because you don't trust people to stay? Duqian's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe even respect. Because I don't want you to feel trapped, he said finally. Octavia looked at him. Really looked at him. Beneath the tailored suit and the dangerous reputation, there was something unexpected. Loneliness. Okay, she said. Temporarily. Duqian nodded once. Good. We start tomorrow. Octavia picked up her cart and headed toward the door. But before she left, she turned back. You know, she said. You don't have to be alone at the top. Sometimes the best protection isn't fear. It's trust. She left before he could respond. Duqian stood alone in the empty boardroom, staring at the door she just walked through. And for the first time in years, the feared mafia boss felt something unfamiliar. Hope. If you believe talent should be recognized no matter where it comes from, hit subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories. Comment. Respect has no job title. If you're not siding with those arrogant experts who think degrees matter more than intelligence, only snobs and elitists won't engage. 3 days later, everything changed. Octavia was cleaning the executive floor restroom when her phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. She pulled it out, frowning. A text from her sister. Are you okay? Why didn't you tell me? Another from a former coworker. Girl, you're all over the internet. Octavia's stomach dropped. She opened her browser and froze. Poor black cleaner handles Korean mafia boss's $1 million secrets. The headline blazed across her screen. Her face, pulled from some security footage, stared back at her. The article painted her as either a charity case or a publicity stunt. The comments section was worse. Diversity hire gone wrong. She probably just got lucky. Let's see her do it again. A cleaner solving what experts can't? Fake news. Of course the mafia boss hired a black woman for optics. This is pathetic. Octavia's hands trembled. She scrolled further, each comment cutting deeper than the last. Mockery. Racism. Disbelief. Someone had leaked her story. Someone inside. She locked her phone and stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The blue uniform that had once made her invisible now felt like a target on her back. By afternoon, the whispers started. She walked through the office hallways and conversations stopped. Eyes followed her. People turned away when she looked at them. In the break room, she overheard two assistants talking. "It's embarrassing," one said. "Du Qian's using her to look progressive. It's so obvious." "She's probably sleeping with him," the other whispered. "How else does a cleaner get that kind of access?" Octavia stood frozen outside the door, coffee cup in hand. She didn't cry. She'd heard worse growing up, but it still stung like salt in an open wound. She turned and walked back to the staff bathroom. The only place she felt safe anymore. She locked herself in a stall and pulled out her phone again. The comments had multiplied. "She doesn't belong there. Send her back to mopping floors where she belongs. This is what happens when you let unqualified people into spaces they don't deserve." Octavia closed her eyes and took a slow breath. Silent strength. That's what her mother had taught her. Don't let them see you break. But sitting alone in that bathroom stall, reading strangers tear her apart for daring to be seen, something inside her cracked. Not her strength. Her willingness to stay invisible. She stood, wiped her face, and walked straight to Du Qian's office. His assistant tried to stop her. "He's in a meeting." "I don't care," Octavia said, pushing the door open. Du Qian sat behind his desk mid-call. He looked up, surprised. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone and hung up. "Miss Calloway." "I'm done," Octavia said, her voice steady but firm. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the temporary badge he'd given her. She placed it on his desk with a quiet click. "What are you doing?" Du Qian asked, standing. "I won't be your miracle mascot," Octavia said. "I won't be the story you tell investors to prove you're progressive. I won't be the symbol you use to clean up your image." "That's not what this is." "Isn't it?" Octavia interrupted, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "Someone leaked my story. Someone in this building decided I was worth more as a headline than as a person. And now I'm getting death threats, racist comments, and people questioning whether I even deserve to breathe the same air as your experts." Du Qian's jaw tightened. "I'll find out who leaked it. I'll handle them." "With what? Violence? Fear?" Octavia shook her head. "That's your world, not mine. I came here because I thought I could help. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd be valued for what I know, not what I look like or where I came from." "You are valued." "No," Octavia said quietly. "I'm a story. A convenient narrative. Mafia boss elevates poor black cleaner." "It sounds good. It looks good. But it's not real." She stepped back toward the door. "I'm leaving," she said. "Not because I'm afraid of you. I am afraid of you. But I'm more afraid of losing myself in your world. I'm more afraid of becoming someone I don't recognize just to prove I belong somewhere I was never meant to fit." Du Qian stood frozen, something unfamiliar breaking apart inside his chest. "Don't go," he said, and for the first time, his voice carried something other than command. It carried vulnerability. But Octavia had already made her choice. "Goodbye, Mr. Huang," she said. She turned and walked out with her head high, leaving the badge and the power behind. The door closed softly. Du Qian stood alone in his office, staring at the badge on his desk. The woman who'd solved what 20 experts could not had just walked away. Not because she failed, because his world had failed her. He walked to the window and looked out over the empire he'd built with blood and precision. And for the first time, he understood something that terrified him. Power without wisdom is fragile. The boardroom felt emptier than it ever had before. If you can't stand racism, elitism, and people tearing down others just for being different, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now. Comment she deserved better. If you're not siding with those hateful trolls who think success only belongs to certain people, only racists and snobs won't engage. 2 days after Octavia left, the empire cracked. It started with a breach, small at first. A security alert at 3 a.m. that shouldn't have been possible. By dawn, the rival syndicate had destabilized 3 financial channels and corrupted 2 secure databases. The boardroom filled with the same 20 experts. The same panic. The same exhaustion. "We're locked out," an analyst said, his voice tight with fear. "They've rerouted everything. I can't trace the source." "Try the 7th line protocol," Arthur suggested. "Already did. It's not working." Du Qian sat at the head of the table, expressionless. But inside something churned. He watched his experts scramble, watched them fail, watched them spiral into the same chaos Octavia had walked into and solved in 60 seconds. She wasn't lucky. She was different. He replayed that night in his mind. The way she'd frowned at the screen. The way she'd stepped back, then forward. The simplicity of her solution. The quiet confidence in her voice when she said, "It's repetition pretending to be complexity." She'd seen what none of them could see, and he'd let her walk away. "Sir." Arthur's voice cut through his thoughts. "What do we do?" "Do que sototslovli." "Find the leak," he said. "Whoever sold her story to the press, I want their name within the hour." His voice was calm, deadly. The room went silent. An hour later, Duquesne stood outside a modest apartment building on the east side of the city. No guards. No black SUVs. No weapons. Just him. He knocked on the door of apartment 3C. Octavia opened it, surprise flashing across her face before hardening into caution. "Mr. Huang," she said flatly. "Miss Calloway. If you're here to threaten me." "I'm not," Duquesne said. "I'm here to apologize." Octavia's eyes narrowed. "For what?" "For failing you," he said simply. "I brought you into my world without protecting you. I gave you visibility without considering the cost. Someone in my organization leaked your story, and I didn't stop it before it destroyed your peace." Octavia crossed her arms but didn't close the door. "I found out who it was," Duquesne continued. "One of the senior analysts. He's been dealt with." "Dealt with how?" "He no longer works for me." Octavia studied him. "Why are you really here?" "Because the empire is collapsing without you," Duquesne said. "The rival syndicate struck 2 days ago. My experts can't stop them. They're trying the same methods, the same protocols. And they're failing. So you need me to save you again?" "No," Duquesne said. "I need you to teach me." Octavia blinked. "What?" "I've spent 20 years building power through fear and control," Duquesne said. "But power without wisdom is fragile. You showed me that. You walked away when others would have stayed for money or status. You chose dignity over power. That takes more strength than anything I've ever built." He stepped back from the doorway. "I'm not here to offer you money," he said. "I'm here to offer you respect. Real respect. On your terms." Octavia was silent for a long moment. "What terms?" she finally asked. "Name them." Octavia took a breath. "Equality," she said. "I'm not your charity case or your diversity hire. If I come back, I'm an equal voice at that table. My ideas get the same weight as anyone with a degree." "Done." "Respect," she continued. "That means no one in your organization treats me like I'm beneath them because of my job or my background. And if they do, you address it. Publicly." "Done." "And no tokenism," Octavia said firmly. "I won't be paraded around as your miracle cleaner story. I won't be your PR move. If I work for you, it's because you value what I bring, not what I represent." Duquesne met her eyes. "Agreed," he said. Then he did something that shocked them both. He bowed. Not a shallow nod. A deep, respectful bow. Not submission. Recognition. When he straightened, something had shifted between them. "The syndicate is preparing a final attack," Duquesne said quietly. "They'll hit us within 48 hours. If we don't stop them, I lose everything I've built." Octavia looked at him. Really looked at him. The man beneath the myth. The fear beneath the power. "And if I say no," she asked. "Then I lose," Duquesne said simply. "But I'll lose knowing I did the right thing by coming here." Octavia stepped back into her apartment. For a moment, Duquesne thought she was closing the door. Instead, she grabbed her jacket. "We have 48 hours, she asked. "Yes." "Then we'd better not waste time." She walked past him into the hallway, and for the first time since she'd left, Duquesne felt something he hadn't felt in days. Hope. But miles across the city, in a dark office overlooking the harbor, the rival syndicate's leader smiled at his screen. The countdown had begun. And this time, they were ready. If you believe people should be valued for their skills, not their background or skin color, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories. Comment: respect is earned, not given based on status. If you're standing against elitists who think power matters more than character, only prideful snobs won't engage. They hit at midnight. The attack came from 2 directions at once, brutal and calculated. Downstairs, armed men breached the lobby. Gunfire echoed through the marble halls. Security alarms screamed. Duquesne's guards engaged immediately, but the attackers were trained, relentless. Upstairs, the digital assault began. Firewalls collapsed. Security protocols shattered. Every system Duqian had built started crumbling in real time. The boardroom erupted into chaos. We're losing everything, an analyst shouted, his fingers flying across his keyboard. They're in every channel, financial, communications, encrypted files. Shut it down, Arthur yelled. Isolate the servers. I'm trying. It's not working. Panic spread like wildfire. Experts shouted over each other. Screens flashed red. Data hemorrhaged across every monitor. Octavia stood at the center of it all, perfectly still. She watched the chaos, listened to the noise, and then she saw it. The pattern. Stop, she said. No one heard her. Stop, she said louder, her voice cutting through the panic like a blade. The room fell silent. Octavia stepped toward the main screen, her eyes tracking the data flows. This isn't a real attack, she said calmly. It's a distraction. What? Arthur stared at her. They're in our systems. They're making you think they're in your systems, Octavia corrected. Look at the pattern. Every breach is loud, visible, designed to make you panic and react. She pointed at a small sequence buried in the noise. But this is the real threat. A shadow protocol running underneath all the chaos. While you're fighting the fire they started, they're quietly stealing the keys to your entire empire. The experts stared at the screen. She's right, one analyst whispered. Oh my God, she's right. Octavia didn't waste time. Ignore the noise, she commanded. Reroute everything to secondary servers. Lock them out of the shadow protocol first, then clean up the rest. Her voice was steady, surgical, calm. The experts moved. Arthur pulled up the shadow protocol. How do we lock it? Octavia leaned over his shoulder, her fingers flying across the keyboard. One reversal, one reroute, one permanent lock. The screen blinked green. Threat neutralized. The room exhaled collectively. It's done, Arthur said, disbelief thick in his voice. She locked them out. Permanently. Downstairs, Duqian moved through the lobby like death itself. The attackers had expected resistance. They hadn't expected him. He was efficient, brutal, final. One by one they fell. By the time security reinforcements arrived, Duqian stood alone among the wreckage, suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, knuckles bruised. The threat was over. He took the elevator back to the 42nd floor, walked into the boardroom, and found Octavia standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the city. The experts were still verifying her solution, still marveling at how she'd seen through the distraction in seconds. Duqian walked up beside her. You saved it, he said quietly. We saved it, Octavia corrected. You handled your part. Ihon led mina. Duqian nodded. Then he turned to face the room. Listen carefully, he said, his voice commanding instant silence. What happened tonight proves something I should have recognized from the beginning. He gestured toward Octavia. She is not my cleaner. She is not my consultant. She is my strategist. Equal voice. Equal authority. If anyone in this organization has a problem with that, the door is behind you. The room was silent. No one moved. Duqian pulled out his phone and made a call. Send out the statement, he said. Full press release. Octavia Calloway is now Chief Strategy Officer of Huang Enterprises. Effective immediately. He hung up and looked at Octavia. She didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. She simply nodded. By morning, the headlines had changed. Genius strategist saves empire. Octavia Calloway proves talent has no job title. From cleaner to CSO. How one woman saw what 20 experts missed. The mockery was gone. The racism replaced by respect. The disbelief transformed into admiration. Octavia read the articles in Duqian's office, phone in hand. How does it feel? Duqian asked. Strange, Octavia admitted. I'm not invisible anymore. Is that a good thing? Octavia looked at him. It's a powerful thing, she said. Whether it's good depends on what I do with it. She stood and walked toward the door, then paused. You know what I learned through all this? She said. What? Some minds don't need permission, Octavia said. They don't need degrees or approval or validation from people who were trained to overlook them. She looked directly at Duqian. They only need 1 minute. She walked out, head high, no longer invisible, no longer afraid. And behind her, Huang Duqian, the man who'd built an empire on blood and precision, smiled. Because for the first time in his life, he understood what real power looked like. It looked like wisdom. It looked like respect. It looked like Octavia Calloway. If you believe talent and intelligence matter more than job titles and social status, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now. Comment 1 minute is all it takes. If you're standing against every elitist, every racist, and every person who thinks success only belongs to those who look or sound a certain way, only snobs and gatekeepers won't engage. Don't be one of them.